Okay, good morning and welcome everybody to the brand new episode of African Techpreneur. I apologize for being a bit late. I was delivering a keynote talk at WASPA, the Wireless Application Service Providers Association, and some of the big guys were there, Vodacom, MTN, Cell C. So we can't disappoint them because if we do, then we don't get network and we don't get signal, right? So that was very interesting. I was talking to them about the age of disruption, about where their businesses are going over the next 10 to 15 years and what they can expect. And more importantly, how they can adapt to what's changing and apply that into their own business models. Now, on a similar topic, as business people, as entrepreneurs, life is a long journey of learning and of exploration. And the one most beneficial advice that I've ever received as a business person, as a human being, is this, that life is all about learning and you can never stop learning. The day you stop learning is the day you start declining as a business. The day you stop learning, because learning leads to what? Learning leads to change, improvement, innovation, and that drives your business forward. If you fail to learn, then you will fail to innovate. If you fail to innovate, you'll be disrupted and you'll be wiped off the face of the earth. I mean, we can talk about giants of the past that were disrupted and they were wiped out. So wherever we can, we find opportunities to learn. And I think one of the best examples of learning from a business is the entertainment industry. Because unlike most industries, the entertainment industry is extremely high pressure. I mean, we as audiences, as fans, we watch a movie, we enjoy the movie or not. We have our own opinions about it. We have opinions about the actors. We talk about how much of money the movie made or didn't make, but we don't realize the amount of hard work and pressure that went on behind the scenes to bring this thing to reality, from a script to a completed movie, and the challenges that they face and the things that can go wrong. And the one movie where things did go wrong, things did go very, very wrong, was Justice League. The Justice League movie, the one with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash. Yeah. And of course, the star of the show was Cyborg, the character Cyborg. So I brought Zach here to talk to me about the Justice League movies. What was the story behind them? What went wrong, and what they did right? So let's take it from the top. By the way, Zach is my son. He's a movie analyst and critic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, and he's going to tell us. Okay, so Justice League was first released about 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, it released first in 2017, but that was the infamous Whedon cut.
Or Justice League.
Or Justice League.
Okay, so what happened there? Tell us.
So I have to take you, I think, a few years prior to Man of Steel for that. Now, when Man of Steel came out, a lot of people were conflicted about the character Superman being too dark. The movie itself being a different tone that they used to from Marvel, for example. And a few years later, when Batman vs. Superman came out, it carried over that same problem, but a lot more critics. So when Justice League was announced and when they were working on it, it was the same director for the previous two movies, Zack Snyder. And a family tragedy occurred and he had to leave the movie. And they saw that as an opportunity to, I guess, reinvent the movie.
To more Marvelize it.
To Marvelize the movie, make it more appealing to the masses, I guess.
Yeah, but you see, what I don't understand is the Dark Knight trilogy, right? The Christian Bale Batman movies. Nobody complained about the dark theme of those movies. Why now? Why are they complaining about this? Was it because of Marvel?
I think it's because whenever you making a superhero movie now, especially in a universe like the MCU, where it's Iron Man, Captain America, it has to follow same algorithm in people's minds. Otherwise, they don't relate to it.
All right. So, okay. So then the movie was really, it was well, what you're saying, it was almost reinvented. This was in post-production, right?
Right.
Right. So the alarm bells are going off already,
Right.
because you're taking a finished product and now you're changing it into something else.
Yeah.
What happened from there? Movie was released.
Okay, so when Joss Whedon took over, he decided to rewrite the script. Of course, using basically the same plot. Just from 4 hours, he made it into like 1 hour, 45 minutes. So obviously, there's a lot taken out. And then he added a lot of his own scenes, which were rushed, sort of sloppy, bad quality, last minute films. And when the movie did come out, it was a major, major flop. Nobody knew why it was a major flop, but everybody just knew they hated it.
Yeah, I mean, but there were lots of detailed analysis about the movie. There were lots of case studies done about why it flopped. And
Right.
to me,
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Okay, no, after the movie came out, people got suspicious that this doesn't look like Zack Snyder at all, because people know how his movies look, and this did not look like his movie. So they started to dig into it. And when they found out that he left and Joss Whedon took over, they actually remade the movie. And that's when the famous hashtag "release the Snyder Cut" came out.
So then people knew that there was an original Snyder Cut.
People knew, and then Zack Snyder came and teased that there was an original version of the Justice League.
But not that Joss Whedon was a bad director. I mean, he wrote and directed Avengers, right?
Right.
Which was phenomenally successful.
Yeah, exactly.
So they brought this guy in to undo everything that Zack Snyder did, and so almost reshape the movies to something. Well, the Justice League movie, to be something more like Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah.
And Marvel's Avengers was more lighthearted. It had its serious moments.
If Zack Snyder were to take over the first Avengers movie before it got released, like a few months before it got released, and tried to make it his own, it would have flopped.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing going both ways. They're both good directors. Just you can't have that conflict.
You can't, and especially not in one product. Because I mean, think if Leonardo da Vinci and let's take a modern artist like Picasso had to collaborate and do a painting, it would be a mess.
Yeah,
it would like
exactly.
having a spaghetti with strawberry jam rather than meatballs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Both are good, but they have their place.
Yeah.
So right. So the Justice League movie came out. It was torn down by fans and critics alike. It didn't even do well in the box office, right?
It barely made a profit, but yeah, it didn't do well.
Okay. So fast forward to 2021, 2.5 years, almost 3 years down the line, cinematic history is made.
Zack Snyder got to make his 4-hour-long Justice League movie as intended by the original script.
Right. So here's the question. So they re-released the movie last week, but in its original form, the way the original director had envisioned it. So basically it took them 3 years to come back to that original vision.
Right, yeah.
How was it?
Well, how was the movie?
The movie.
The movie was, okay, to compare it to the old movie to the original release.
Don't compare.
Is unfair, because this movie was a much different experience. It was amazing. You could tell that it was Zack Snyder's intended vision, and it really showed. It was one of the best superhero movies I've ever watched.
Wow. So from one of the worst to one of the best, which
same
is
plot though. Like if you think about it, it's the same plot, but why is one so amazing and yet
Right?
one so bad?
all the more remarkable. Same plot, same actors, but in the way it was presented, Zack Snyder had a way. I'm guessing if Joss Whedon were to restart filming of Justice League, the writing and the filming in his own way, it would have been something more like Marvel, like Avengers, but it might have been a good movie. But what went wrong was that hodgepodge, that mix-up of two different directors' works on the same movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so tell me something. Are you aware of any other time in history when a movie was re-released out of necessity? I'm not talking about director's cut, right? That's something.
Nothing comes to mind. There were a few movies back in the day where you'd have a theatrical version and a director's version, which
Yeah.
is essentially where a director gets to add in a lot more extra things that a theater otherwise wouldn't allow, extra scenes, or it gets too long, like the runtime is too long. But there's never been something this drastic.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's the other question, right? So this is the first in history, right?
Yeah.
In that sense. In the second way, it was a 4-hour movie, 4-hour, and that had to do with the fact that it was streamed and it wasn't the cinematic release. For those of you that don't know, if a movie is going to show in cinemas, it can't be more than 3 hours long, because cinemas need to make money out of movies. So they can't show a movie only twice in a day. They need to show at least 3 or 4 times. And a too long movie, like 4 hours, would allow them to only play it like twice in a day. But since this one was streamed, it went on to 4 hours.
And it was an innovation in the sense that movie companies and producers were scared to release it digital because they thought it was going to take away from the experience and make them earn less from the movie. But Justice League proves that they make in a lot more money than they ever did with the theatrical version.
I read somewhere it's set to become the highest making streaming movie in history.
It already made, less than a week after its release, it already made $650 million.
Wow, 650 million. So there's a chance it'll clock $1 billion.
There's a good chance it'll clock $1 billion.
Wow, $1 billion. What's the exchange rate? That's 17 billion rands. I could live with money like that. So, I mean, and it's not a completely new movie. It's just a rehash of the same movie. So there wasn't any wasn't a lot of additional cost that went into
a lot of the costs were just the movie wasn't finished with the editings, like the CGI was incomplete, but in terms of how much they had to put in, it wasn't a lot. So they made a lot more profit than a lot of movies, a lot of superhero movies.
Yeah. Okay, so that's so much for the movies and the history of this Justice League movie. It's a case study. For me, I found it very interesting. I found the case study, I found the backstory of the movie far more interesting than the movie itself, because there was so much of background politics. Maybe there should be a movie about the Justice League movie, a documentary about making Justice League. There's so much that we can learn from there as business people, believe it or not. First thing first, right? Let's look at the shift. You got two good directors, Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder. Joss Whedon did Avengers, phenomenal success, and and he made a name for himself. Zack Snyder was more, he focused more on the dark themed movies, where things are a lot more serious, less comical, less jokey. And he set out to make Justice League in that way. But then in the middle were these studio execs, right? And I feel, personally, I think that's where the problem lies. I mean, as much as everybody's blaming Joss Whedon, but I think at the heart of the problem is the business, right? Every business needs to have a vision. And if you don't have a vision and a set of values, then everything that comes along will be enticing. The grass will always be greener. Steve Jobs famously said that the challenge in business is not what to do, it's not what not to do. All the things that you have to sacrifice just so that you can stay on track. And that's where most businesses get it wrong. They try to be everything to everyone, and that's where they lose focus. So I think that it started there, right? The studio execs, Warner Brothers, didn't have a clear vision about what Justice League should be like. So they were probably like, we're not really sure. Should it be like this? Or, wow, Avengers is doing so well. Maybe it should be like that. Maybe it should be, okay, we got an idea. Let's make it both.
Yeah.
So now you got a sandwich that's got your steak. It's got your tomato jam. It's got your fresh cream. It's got everything into it because you can't decide you want to go this way or that way. So the challenge for an entrepreneur is to pick your vision, choose your vision, and focus on that.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think when it comes to the example you say where the producers ruined it, it's because you can't follow the money. If you try to have an idea that makes the most money possible, you're going to end up with a Justice League situation.
Exactly. I think they were chasing money, but it brings us back to what your grandfather used to tell us: never chase money, chase quality. Money will come. So I think they chased the money. They wanted to replicate Avengers' success, and they ended up making this Frankenstein of a movie. And I mean, like patchwork quilt of a movie, and I hated it.
Yeah,
I hated it. So that was the first thing. They should have had a vision, and they should have stuck to the vision. And the great thing about having a vision is that the vision becomes the driver for the business, not the people. So if one director goes and another director comes, I mean, anything could have happened, right? Zack Snyder had a tragedy in his family. He lost his daughter, but at the same time, he could have died, right? He could have died and he could have been out of the movie. They could have replaced him with a new director who should have picked up on Zack's vision and roll with it. So that's lesson number one in a business. Have a vision and let the vision drive the business, right? So in the very early stage of a business, you need to have a clear vision of what you want to do. A lot of people might say, well, why stress about that early on? Why not, come up with that later on? No, it's when you plant that seed, you need to know what you're planting. That's what I believe in. People they come to us now as IT Varsity. They say, well, why don't you have any business courses? And why don't you bring on, some other courses like in accounts and things? I'm like, listen, IT Varsity is a coding school. That's all we are. And that's all we want to be. That's our vision, right? It's a fun, high impact coding school that's there to fast track people into the world of work. Otherwise, we're going to become one of those that like Justice League. Yeah. So that's the first thing, the vision. I think they lost vision, they lost focus, and they ended up with a real doozy. But when Zack Snyder came back, he restored the vision.
Yeah, the vision was still there. It's never lost. It's just you just have to have the original vision back, the original intention back, and you'll be able to restore it. So it's never too late, basically.
But it takes courage.
No, it does.
I think it took Zack Snyder a lot of courage to come back and say, well...
He was fortunate because he had millions of fans pushing him to get his movie out there. So he had the support of the people. So that was good for him.
Fantastic. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing about business is to be original. Every business, like every human being, has very specific characteristics. It has a personality. I feel a business has a personality. I mean, you walk into certain stores and you get a certain vibe. You walk into another store, you get a completely different vibe. And that's because businesses have a personality. And it's the same with movies. They have a personality. The Avengers had a personality. The Justice League had a personality. And that's what people like. Now, what Marvel tried to do was they tried to copy.
What DC, you mean? What DC tried to do?
What DC tried to do was to try and copy Marvel.
Yeah.
And again, they flopped up. They should have been true to what they are. They should have been original. Instead of making Justice League into another Avengers, they should have asked, what can we do differently?
Exactly, yeah.
And how do you do that? You focus on your own strengths, right?
Yeah, you focus on the original vision, the original creative's vision, which was Zack Snyder.
Yeah. And that worked for them in the past, which makes it even stranger, right? That with Dark Knight, it worked for DC, but now these guys try to change it. And listen, it's easier said than done. Trust me, it's easier said than done. When you are in business and when there's so many temptations all around, when people will tell you, well, this business is doing so well and that guy is doing so well and this business got bought off for $100 million, you get tempted as a business person to switch tracks. And that's the time when you're truly tested. whether you have the resolve to stick to your vision, to be original, or you're going to lose it and you're going to chase the money and you're going to fall prey to that grass is always greener mentality. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, and this is the most important to me, in business, things go wrong. And when things go wrong, don't hesitate to get up and try again. Just get up and try again. Now, what did Warner Brothers do? I mean, I tip my hat to them that they green lighted this and they allowed Zack Snyder to come back and do his thing, and they've seen success. They've seen the rewards.
Seen massive success. Yeah,
I think they deserve it. They set a precedent. They could have said, you know what, put that thing in a coffin and let it stay. But it's seldom like that. It's seldom like that in life. You could think of the first Justice League, and that's why I really like this, because from a software developer perspective, it makes so much sense. The first Justice League was a beta test. They put it out into the world. People hated it. They brought it back. They improved. They listened to their clients. They listen to their customers. And that's something that lots of businesses don't do. They don't listen to people. They don't listen to what people really need and make products or design products that fulfill those needs. They think they know more, or they want to chase the money. So I think that it was a lesson to all of us. If at first things go wrong, learn from your mistakes, get up, start again.
Definitely. Yeah.
Or rework it. They call it pivoting.
Yeah, and it is also easy to lose sight of your vision once a lot of people start to question you and your goal, and why don't you do it this way and why don't you do it that way, which is what I'm sure a lot of people told Zack Snyder, which is why when he left, they saw the opportunity to rework it themselves. But again, he knew what he wants and he stuck to it. I mean, there's a difference between constructive criticism and just negative ones that you have to filter out.
Yeah, I mean, now you raise another point. It's about how much do you listen to people, right? How much do you listen, and how much of your vision you say. There's a balance, because somebody asked Henry Ford. Henry Ford famously said that, listen to this. People asked him, why don't you listen to people? Henry Ford said, if I listened to people, they would have asked me to build a faster horse, not a car. And I think Thomas Edison said a similar thing about the light bulb. If he was trying to make people happy, he would have come up with a better candle, not the light bulb. So in business, it's a fine line that a business person, a visionary, an entrepreneur treads between what people want and what your vision is. And I think it's a judicious and a very careful combination of those two things that drive your business forward. I mean, definitely. Here's a real world example, right? When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple in the late 90s, and he came back in the early 2000s, I think late 90s or early 2000s, he came back. He slashed their product line. I think they had like a few dozen different products that Apple was making. He slashed it to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
MacBooks, and that time there wasn't iPhones and tablets. There was the iPods and a few other products.
Yeah.
Right. He says, well, we're not going to make all those things. We're just going to focus on these few things. So I think those are the 3 lessons that I take away from Justice League. Love it or hate it, that's up to you. I think we didn't give away any spoilers. Go and watch the movie. It's definitely worth watching, but take lots of toilet breaks and snack breaks.
4 hours.
4 hours. Yeah. But the 3 lessons are: number 1, have a vision and let the vision be the driver. Second, be original. Don't try and copy everyone else. And thirdly, if things go wrong, try again. You may have flopped up your whole business. You might have failed your whole business, but it doesn't mean the end of the world. And that mentality comes from school, where, you failed. That's it. There's no chance to rectify that negative mentality.
Yeah.
But in the real world, if you really think about it, there are opportunities to make things better. There are lots of opportunities. So give us some final, in the final analysis, tell us one thing that you really enjoyed about the Snyder Cut and something you would have changed if it was Zack Catrada, not Zack Snyder doing it.
Okay, this is an unpopular opinion, but I feel like he should have maybe spaced out the pacing a little bit more to a few movies. I mean, there was a lot to handle in this movie, so maybe 2 movies.
Yeah, I think there were legal issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
There were legal issues. He couldn't do it because there was a legal contract for one movie, and it would have been messy.
In that, keeping that in mind, I think then I have nothing else to add.
But what did you like most about it? What's your favorite aspect of it?
Batman.
Why is that not surprising? Okay, cool. So we are done. Let's open up for any questions, remarks, comments anybody wants to make. Akifa, it's all yours.
Hi. Okay, so we don't have any questions coming through. I think Facebook is a little bit lagging from our real time on Zoom. But I like this topic, especially today, around trial and error. And I think, especially as entrepreneurs, and we look at African tech entrepreneurs, which is becoming more and more of the younger youth, I think that a lot of people, especially in the youth, are really fearful of failure. And I feel like, having the courage just to come back from it, that resilience to just step up and just, give it your all and actually do things differently. I definitely think that today's lesson definitely touched a lot on that. And I hope it gave, quite a bit of inspiration to the viewers, because I think a lot of people, they have amazing ideas. Many have quite solid ideas, but that fear of failure often, paralyzes them from actually pushing forward with it. I'm looking here for some of the questions. Nothing's coming
While you're
through
looking,
yet.
I just want to comment on your comment.
Yeah.
That fear of failure comes from school. I mean, the moment you hear the word fail, the first thing that comes into most people's minds is failing an exam. And the exam is one of the most inconsequential things we will ever do in our lives. If you think about it, a child fails a grade 7 English exam. What does that say about a child and her future or anything about her? Nothing, right? So I think there's a fundamental change that needs to happen in our schooling. There's a lot of unlearning to do. There's a lot of damage that's being done, that fear of failure. Right? In the real world, there's seldom ever such thing as a major failure. I mean, here's an example, right? If you design a website for a company and you present it and they don't like it. So what happens next? Are they just going to give you an F and say, right, buzz off, you failed? No, they're going to say, well, look, we like this aspect, but we're not so sure about this. We need this to be changed, these colors, these images. So there's a back and forth process that takes place. There's an iterative process that kicks in, and continuous improvement until it's perfected. It's the same with business. We all make mistakes all the time. But what do? We go back, we reconfigure, we plan, we innovate, we come back, and we fix. I can't tell you how many times we've made mistakes at IT Varsity, but we've always managed to get up, dust ourselves, fix it, and come back. And the biggest mistake that I've made personally was, taking on investors who were just chasing money, and that led to me losing my entire business. And then we started up again, and here we are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I also think that, one of the things I always tell people about IT Varsity is that when you're making mistakes, there's support, there's let's support you in growing in this aspect. But I think many work cultures doesn't promote that kind of thinking, where someone, if you mess up, it's okay. We're going to support you to getting you to that next level. But yeah, let's get to the comments. I see some of them came through. So Ridwan Williams, which is coming all the way from PE, he mentions the biggest thing I come across in schools is that teachers put children in a box. This is the ideology he wants to change. Okay. Then Lerato, she mentions lovely comment about failure, Bilal. Every fail is a chance to improve.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the comments coming through. Yeah, I definitely think also, in terms of work culture, how do we support people who fail? And like, something that Zach mentioned about the fans, that support from his fans really often pushes you to have the courage to, try again.
Yeah, I think one good way is I think there's an answer in your question, and the answer is surround yourself with people who will support you, people who are positive, who have a positive mindset, who will pick you up when you are down, when you fail. And I'm saying when, because it's going to happen, right? At some stage or the other. So you need to surround yourself with people who will support you. And so when it does happen, they are there for you, and you keep with them. The major problem that most of us have, listen to this, the major problem is that we fail before we even start. You know why? Because we surround ourselves with toxic people. People will say, well, your business is not going to work. That's a weird idea. Nobody like you has ever done anything like that. This is for those people or that people. That's crazy. That's crazy thinking. So that's the first thing. Let's go back to what Ridwan said about teachers put children in a box. Okay, Ridwan, that's partially true. I'll tell you why. I used to be a teacher myself. And trust me when I tell you, the teacher is not just putting the child in the box, the teacher himself is in the box. So the system boxes in the teacher. There's no room for innovation. There's no room for coming up with good ideas. It's just, here's the template, stick to this template. This is what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, you're not a good teacher. So they give you, 1 year to open the child's head and throw as much information as you possibly can, not caring about the child. Oh, who cares about you? Nobody cares about you and your personality and your needs. That you can go to the damn guidance counselor. I'm only here to download all that nonsense into your head. So that's the box that teachers are in. In fact, I had a chat with a teacher the other day who says, the problem with my students is that they are very needy and they need attention all the time. So my question was, why don't you just give them that attention they need? Because these are human beings. These are not machines where you're just putting a USB stick and downloading information into their brains. What they need most is your support and your understanding as a teacher. So then she understood. I see there's some other comments coming up.
I'm going to skip over the comments for now, but I'm going to go over to the question of Sipo. So Sipo's like, how best can I separate the company's vision and the customer's or colleagues' point of view regarding my business?
Wow, brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. I can't tell you what's the overall. You want to add something?
I think it's again how to filter out negative criticism from constructive criticism. Like when Zack Snyder released his movies, I'm using that as an example again. He had a lot of people telling him his movie is trash. They don't like his style of movie, so he filtered those out. And even though people accuse him of pandering to his fans, he stuck with their criticisms. And even though they were negative about his movie, he knew they had heart as well as him. They wanted the best for his business as well as his movie as well as him.
Yeah, I think Sipo, the way to do it is to start by identifying problems and speak to people, identify what the problem is, go back and come up with your own solution. Come up with your own solution and propose it to the world. See how it catches. I mean, take the iPad, for example, right? When Steve Jobs released the iPad, no one in the world wanted an iPad. No one said, hey, Apple, why not make a big clunky iPhone, an oversized iPhone that's huge to carry around. There's my iPad here. But they did. They didn't hear what people said. They solved a problem. He probably saw, people writing in notebooks people using their laptops to watch movies in planes and in bus stations and things. So let's come up with something that will solve that problem. And then they came up with an iPad. But even at that time, subsequent to that, people asked him, were you sure this was going to succeed? He says, no, I wasn't sure. Listen to Steve Jobs said, Sipo, listen to this. Steve Jobs said the iPad was invented by us long before the iPhone, right? So we designed the iPad, and before we could release the iPad, we shelved it, and then we released the iPhone.
Wow.
And only after a couple of years did we release the iPad, after the iPhone was successful. So even then, they took a chance. It's a risk. So step 1, identify problem. Step 2, solve the problem. Step 3, put it out, put your solution out, see how people find it, get some feedback, and then continuously improve it. But see, there's a difference between improving it and trying to make it into something that it's not. To be a crowd pleaser. Don't be a crowd pleaser. Stick to your vision. Okay.
Okay, so the next question, and I like this question actually, because I feel this is something we find very common in business. Okay, so T Matonzi is asking, but how do you know when to let go of an idea that is constantly failing? Where and how does one draw the line between failing on a project and trying again? Whereas you actually have to stop completely and just start another idea. Because sometimes something won't work out, but we'll constantly invest our time, our money on it because we are scared of being a quitter. So how can you tell if something's worth trying again?
Today we're getting some brilliant questions. These are my favorite questions so far in the series. T, thanks for that. That's a brilliant question. Doesn't that apply to so many things in life, even to relationships, huh? Like when do you reach that point, that threshold where you have to say, you know, enough is enough? I mean, I don't know. I wish I had a more accurate answer for you, but I think there's two aspects, right? From my personal experience, there are two aspects you have to consider. One is the facts, and the other is the emotional, the gut feel that you have as a developer or an entrepreneur. So firstly, you need to start looking at the facts, right? For example, when the first version of IT Varsity didn't work out, we started CompuKids. And what I found was, as much as CompuKids was a good product, it was too far ahead of its time. It was at least 5, 6, 7 years ahead of its time. And it just wasn't catching. It wasn't catching in the market. So what I decided was, let's park CompuKids. After about, how long did we go with CompuKids?
It was about 2 years.
About 2 years we went with CompuKids. Look, it was doing okay, but it was nowhere on the scale that we envisioned. And then we decided, you know what, let's not kill it, let's park it, and we'll focus more on the online version of IT Varsity. And we started that, and that took off. And now we're seeing something weird that's happening now in 2021, where CompuKids is coming to life again. And there's more and more demand for the CompuKids products. So at that time, we looked at the facts. We looked at, we've been doing this for X amount of time. We had X amount of projections. We didn't make as much money as we wanted to. We didn't make as much impact. We tried our best. We did this and that, didn't work out. There were problems. Right, okay, let's park that off. But also it was an entrepreneurial gut feel that right now the need of the time is for IT Varsity, for adult level courses, not so much kiddies courses. And so we decided to focus on that. And that was a good decision. That was an excellent decision that we made. But in this little baby, CompuKids caught up again. It's kind of coming up again. So T, I think you need to give an idea about 2 to 3 years. Then you know you are getting somewhere or not. But even then, if it hasn't worked out in 2 to 3 years, think about how you can pivot, how you can tweak it to become acceptable. I mean, or become a success. And to give you an example, just this morning, I was listening to a story about a woman who was running a store for, Marie Claire, a store for big size people, right? For big size women. And she just wasn't succeeding. The business was about to fail. But then she brought in a consultant and she asked the consultant, what's going on? Why is my business failing? There is a need. This was in London. There's lots of plus-sized women, and this we can do plus-size, thanks for the PC term. We should be doing well. But then they realized, after they observed the business, they observed her, was that she had she was a very fit person, and she had this very condescending attitude towards her customers. So she would say derogatory things to them sometimes, and things that hurt their feelings without realizing it. And as a result, customers went elsewhere. They didn't shop by her place. So after a couple of years, she could have closed the business, but then she pivoted, changed the attitude, and her business was a success. So before you give up on the dream, before you give up on the vision, look at what went wrong. And that's where having a mentor is very important. Your mentor will be able to look at the business from outside and tell you, you know what, you're doing this wrong. Perhaps, pivot and find a better way of doing it. So yeah, I don't think you should ever worry about being called a quitter. I would call you a pivoter. Call yourself a pivoter, where you took an idea, you tweaked it, or you parked it, you went for another idea, and hopefully you came back to that. It's just the way of the world. Cool.
So yeah, I think that's about it for today. Don't see any more questions, but as always, our viewers are they're more than welcome to obviously send the ideas and the questions through, and we'll obviously answer them to the best of our ability. Thank you so much for that.
It's a pleasure. I think we've run out of time. Once again, I apologize for being a bit late for today's session, but in my opinion, I think this was the best session yet. The questions, wow, the audience is on fire today, really. Excellent questions. Awesome, people. Thank you so much. We have so many people. In fact, in last week's episode, we had about, the audience is really growing. We had almost close on to 65, almost 70 people live. And afterwards, we had about 2,500 to 3,000 views on the video that was on Facebook. Thanks a lot for all your support, guys. We really, really appreciate it. Awesome stuff. Thanks a lot. And have a good long weekend. Is there a long weekend coming up? No, that will be next weekend. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.